Please welcome Adrienne Fitzgerald.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. So I'm a park ranger at Capitol Reef National Park, and this is a program that we normally do as one of our kind of regular through the summer evening programs at the campground. So it is a little bit geared for a lot of people that might be just traveling through the area, trying to introduce them to some of the wildlife that are here at night. So I think this is a great way to give everybody a refresher of who's living in the neighborhood, who you may not see during the daytime. And I bet you all have some good stories of the animals that we'll talk about that sometimes the other audiences are like, oh, I've never seen one, but you'll be like, I have some living in my yard. So that could be kind of interesting. We'll talk about the nocturnal animals that we find in Capitol Reef and in this whole surrounding area, really through much of the Colorado Plateau. So I think you'll recognize a lot of these. And as locals, just like people visiting the park, you notice it gets quieter after sunset. A lot of people stay for that last photograph of the cliffs, and then they head back to wherever they're staying, or you just kind of wrap it up for the night. People settle in at their campsite and try to feel comfortable in a new place, or maybe you put some lights up around. Ooh, make sure I get the right button there. A lot of people have campfires even when it's still 90 degrees, just for the comfort of it, for the ambiance. And we're walking around the campground like it's really hot, but there's something about the security of that, I think, for a lot of people. And part of it, I think, comes down to fighting away the darkness of the night. We're not really designed for night travel and activity. And a lot of people in the campsites will even try to fight it pretty hard and light things up around their RV. You might know some dwellings or places in the community where you're like, that's brighter than it used to be. So sometimes people aren't used to keeping it dark at night. And as just humans in general, I mean, anyone willing to admit you were afraid of the dark as a little kid? I mean, I don't really remember it, but I was afraid of things in the dark. I worked with a park ranger at Grand Canyon not long ago, a total adult, and I remember her saying, I won't go to sleep until I close the closet door. So, those kind of things like what's under the bed, what's coming to get you. We're not good at night, and in the past, there used to be a lot of things out there that might try to get us at night. So maybe this is part of our human nature to have a little bit of hesitation when our senses are not all at their best out there. And it doesn't help, with the things that have been thrown out there to make us scared, to convince us there's things under the bed, and everyone can pick their favorite horror movie. I have been scarred since childhood by this whole series. I mean, everyone has a particular villain or a Stephen King movie that scared you to death. Nightmare on Elm Street, I still wake up in a cold sweat, I can't look at it. So we're gonna move on. But our senses aren't great. We imagine things out there, we hear things, they sound louder and larger than they really are, when often what's out there at night is not necessarily something we need to be so afraid of. So it's kind of good to just learn who's out there and learn that the darkness does not have to be feared. But humans are a small group of mammals that are part of this diurnal group, that we're daytime active. We share that with monkeys and apes and squirrels and a bunch of birds, but they're not mammals, obviously. But there's not too many other animals that are primarily daytime focused. Nocturnal, lots of cool critters. So many of the animals here, and people come to the park and they wonder, where's all the wildlife? And we have to explain, well, it's hot. It's the desert. They're not necessarily out all day. Why would they be hiding during the day? Anybody want to throw out any obvious answers here? Shade, yeah, just get away from the sun. What else?
Hydration.
Yeah, you're going to lose a lot of moisture out there. And the UV is super intense. And then you start to think, well, it can get into predator and prey as well. Are there things that might hunt them during the day, or might they find better prey at night? So kind of all those things come into play, making many of our animals nocturnal, and so they all have superpowers. We aren't great at night, but everything that's out there at night that's designed for the night has amazing superpowers, or I guess technically I should say nocturnal adaptations. That's the scientific way of phrasing, but like they can do some amazing things. And whenever you think about, what would be your favorite superpower if you could have one, we don't always think of these ones, so these are kind of neat ones to throw into the possibility list. Sometimes I have sounds in here, and they're not going to join us in right now, but if you want to howl like a coyote, go for it. But there's a lot going on at night, and we sometimes hear it. We see signs in the morning. We see tracks and scat, and I keep hitting the wrong button. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, that's just showing there would have been sound there. So you can get hints of who was out and active at night, and you probably see this in your yards or when you go for a hike, and you're like, wow, there's fresh tracks from last night. There's scat that might be all you see of some of the coolest animals out there, and you don't actually get eye contact with them, but it tells us a lot. And of course, there's the in-between animals. What do we call those? The dawn and dusk animals, anybody remember? Crepuscular, exactly. It's a good word. It's just sounds nice rolling off the tongue. They've got some adaptations for night, but not as much as the nocturnal primary animals. They're better than we are by many categories. And those are ones you'll see, kind of anytime, but they're pretty good at night. But us, no. We are daytime. We are designed to be out here in the bright sunlight. We have great eyes for daytime. Like a typical human eye can see thousands of colors, incredibly sharp detail, fine detail in bright light, all sorts of amazing variations that we can pick up. So we tend to light things up kind of bright at night because we kind of like it. And that's when we see best. So, that's part of our eye. It likes that. That's why we like to put on all these lights. But just kind of flashing back to probably high school biology, if we want to think about the human eye for a moment, and we won't get into all the parts, but the light's obviously coming in through your cornea, that the pupil is the black part, and the iris, your colored part, gets bigger or smaller, opens that opening for the pupil to let the light in to come, focus through the lens. It's all set up like an old camera. You can think of it like the lens and the projecting onto a screen back here. The retina is the part that comes in here though, because the retina is filled with photoreceptors that are going to send those images to the brain. And the retina is filled with rods and cones. And I didn't take too much biology in college or high school. I was a geologist, but this stuff is pretty simple. You've got rods and cones named for their shapes, so that makes it easier. We have a ton of cones. Those are the color vision. Those are the daytime vision. And they're primarily gathered in the center of the retina, like millions and millions of them in there. And they can see incredible detail in the center when it's light out. But the rods are around the outside of our retina, and they are the part that gets activated when there's not much light. So in dim light, those start to work. They don't see color. So kind of like the RGB of like an old color TV is those cones in the center. The rods outside only see in grayscale, but they can see in dim light. And it's kind of a neat thing I didn't realize it until someone pointed out to me, as you're outside getting adapted to the dark without lights on, suddenly you don't notice what color your friend's jacket is. Like if you look around, you're like, I don't know, was that red or blue? Like you really can't tell. It just shifts into grayscale. So it's kind of interesting. And then you think back, evolutionarily, it might have been good in the old days when animals were trying to eat us if you had good peripheral vision. And that's where your rods are kicking in on the sides, because you wanted to know if some big animal was coming to get you. Hence our, maybe fear of the dark in the beginning. But that gives us all that great daytime vision. We don't have night goggles like some of the nighttime animals do. Obviously, you all are going to know whose adorable little face that is, perching over a tree in the darkness with those glowing eyes, right? I don't have the sound, so I'm not going to make a growl sound here. But how many of you have had sightings of a mountain lion? I'm thinking I'm going to get more here than I normally do. This is fantastic. Anybody have a negative encounter? Okay, because I'm going to talk about them like they're cool, so that's good. But I've never gotten to see one. I've seen fresh tracks. I've come across a deer that had been killed in the hour I had walked by and come back. So I've gotten close, but I've never seen one in, living out in this region for 25 years. So lucky for you all, they're amazing nocturnally adapted animals. They can be active at dawn and dusk too, but that glow of the eyes is the first cue for a good nocturnal animals. Anybody know that crazy word that it's called, or two words? get into like Greek and Latin. That eye glow is a tapetum lucidum, and they're chasing things that are not so good at night. So deer, crepuscular, not as great vision, elk, same thing. So they kind of take advantage of that kind of thing. But that glow, and you've probably seen this if you have a cat or a dog or any pet at home and you catch it in the light, it's reflecting off another surface in their eye that all these nocturnal animals have, called the tapetum lucidum or lucidum, means bright tapestry or tapestry of light. And it's another layer, sort of an iridescent tissue back by the retina. And so the light comes in, it hits that, so it gets like doubled and bounced back again. So it increases the amount of light they get to use. It's kind of a weird picture, but that's actually one from a cow. Just so it's big enough you can see it. Literally is like opalescent. So it's actually acting like a little mirror back there and increasing the amount of light so they can see better at night. So that's just one part of their eyes that's really good. They've also got pupils that open up 3 times more surface area than humans, and like our eyes are about the same size, but their pupils can get really wide, so it lets in a lot. And they have 8 times more rods per surface area than humans. So they can see so much better with much, much less light. So those are kind of standard things that we start to see in a lot of the nocturnal animals. And then they also have all those features that make them a great hunter day or night. They've got the, like the straight ahead eyes, you recognize the predator skull, eyes on the front, binocular vision, like we have, because we're predators too. But we have this overlap in our field of view. And that's the quick thing you can look at an animal skull and be like, is this a predator or prey? Are the eyes forward with that overlap so that you can judge an accurate distance for your prey and nail it real well? But prey have their eyes back over here like deer and bighorn and stuff because they're just watching to the sides for these things coming at them. So that's always a good sign so they can, pounce and hit their prey right where they need to. And, like a house cat, I mean, they're basically just big house cats. They've got decent sized ears for their head. They're not huge, but they have really good hearing. And if you watch a cat sleep at night, you might see their ears twitch even when they're sleeping. Like they can rotate them independently to try to pick up different sounds around them. And even their whiskers are incredibly sensitive. And you know that if you have, I don't have cats, but I know cats. But those whiskers are so important because they have tons and tons of sensory nerves at the base of each whisker. So that's why it's really important that their whiskers don't get cut off or damaged in some way because they're using those to sense things going by, to sense prey going by, even without seeing them if it's really dark. So they can catch the airflow of things just with the senses in their whiskers. And that becomes common in other nocturnal animals as well. So I hope I get to see one. I guess that's what I'm saying with this. You're lucky if you have. We know they're out there, but there's not too many of them. They have huge ranges. So consider yourself lucky if you've gotten to cross paths in a safe way with them. And then, you might see their signs. That's the more common thing, to see those big tracks in the size of an adult human hand, basically. Large scat as well, filled with fur. They are pure meat eaters, so you're not going to get vegetation in there too much. They are eating meat, but those big footprints are a pretty dead giveaway with that size. And no claws shown because they've retracted them to be quiet at night. And normally there'd be a little sound here of our next predator, an amazing group of predators that we have that's more airborne than our mountain lion. So we're going to just kind of go through a whole bunch of animals. I'm going to get faster as we go because we're going to have covered many of the traits. But obviously owls, we have 9 species of owls documented in the park. There might be a few more as we get out to this area with bigger trees and that kind of thing. But we have 9 species, and obviously with an owl, like the first thing you notice are the eyes, right? Big old eyeballs. And I didn't bring all the stuff down here with me that I sometimes have a bunch of props, but their eyeballs are about the same size as human eyeballs, like an adult, in a body the size of a small loaf of bread. So you can hold up like softballs to your face, and that's the equivalent of their eyes. So you want to just get an idea, like what would I look like as an owl? Like smack those up there. And that does a few weird things to their overall biology, but their eyes are packed with rods. They have tons and tons of rods. Recent studies have shown they have some, there's an owl statue right behind me, I didn't even see that. Recent studies have shown they have some special DNA that really allows them to see in almost total darkness. So even learning more about them and how well they see in the dark, and it's pretty amazing, but big ol' eyes. in a pretty small body. And that means there's not, I mean, we can sit here and you can probably look, you're kind of looking ahead towards me. Can you, without moving your head, can you look to the left and the right a little bit, just moving your eyes? I think I see everybody doing it, right? Like without, we're not like turn our head, we can just move our eyes. They can't do that. Owls can't do that because they don't have room for the muscles around those eyes. They're so big and they totally fill their skull. So instead of being able to see that way, they have adaptations in their neck. We all know, owls can like turn their head pretty far, but it's a ridiculous amount of degrees. So, I mean, nobody hurt yourself. I don't want anybody to get a stiff neck, but like I can look to one shoulder okay. I can look to the other one okay. I'm not going any farther than that. I'd always heard they can go 180 and like look behind their head. They can actually go beyond that. They can almost get over the next shoulder. They have twice as many neck bones and a special bone at the base of their skull that gives them extra rotation to make up for the fact that they can't move their eyes. Like, it's a pretty amazing feature because they're out at night, and so they're maximizing that part in their skull. And they also have that same thing we saw with the mountain lions. They've got that binocular vision, so they can pinpoint where the prey is. They can hear them really well. They can nail it without even being able to see. So in total darkness, some have found great hunting abilities. And I was, like they have great hearing. But obviously, it's weird. Like they look like ears, right? Long-eared owl. We even called it the long-eared owl. But those are my favorite word that I have learned in the last many years. Plumicorns are what some people call them. I think that's a fantastic word. But they, and there's some different ideas out on why many of them have these plumes of feathers. Some scientists have said maybe it's to help them like blend better with a tree and break up a silhouette of a head that's perfect and might blend in more with bark. That it seems kind of like a neat idea, but those are not their ears because birds don't have external ears. Even, they just have these little things that look like nice little pointy horns there, but they've got ear slits like other birds. It's a opening in the feathers into a big ear cavity because their skulls have large openings for the ears, so they can absorb a lot of sound in there. And some owls, including some of the ones we have in this area, have a special adaptation in their skull that where the ears are offset, a little forward and a little up and down. So they can triangulate when they hear something. If there's a little mouse scurrying along, they could, figure out which way it is this way and which way, and know exactly where to go, even if they can't see it. So kind of a neat thing when you see it in the skull, like they're using some hearing there that we can't even imagine, and can catch, their little critters in total darkness in some cases. There's been some neat experiments done in black rooms with owls swooping down at little critters with some fancy cameras. And the other part, and some of you may have experienced this, you ever have an owl fly overhead and almost give you a heart attack because you didn't see it coming? They're totally silent. They are silent flyers because the back edge of their feathers is kind of serrated like this, like a comb, so it breaks up the air as it flies. And then they also have an extra downy layer in their feathers that breaks up high frequency sound. So they fly totally silently. I've walked my dogs around and had a big owl swoop down a number of times and almost give me a heart attack. You're like, just this large thing, this shape, not going at you, just coming too close and totally silent. So that's always a really exciting thing. But they are excellent hunters, and this is where we see a great example of niche differentiation, where they're hunting those little critters at night, the same kind of critters that hawks and other birds of prey are hunting during the day. So they can split up the habitat into by dark and light, not just trees and river and that kind of thing. They're doing it by different cycles of the daytime, and that way they don't conflict over what they're going for. So kind of a neat example of getting more mice eaten in the area. And we see their signs in the morning at the base of a roost or something, all those cool owl pellets that you probably took apart in grade school and figured out the little bones and everything. And it turns out a lot of the bones, there's some of their favorite critters, are adorable little wood rats. Particularly for the Mexican spotted owl, the wood rat is their favored meal. So lots of those little bones belong to these cute critters that we all know and love to hate. I love them, but we all hate them when they get in our cars, right? Or when they make a mess in your crawl space. Pack rats, wood rats, same thing. They're known for gathering lots of material into their midden. They bring back all sorts of things. I've had them steal jewelry from me when I was camping, and they scurried over me and it was gone. They will steal shiny things. They will get around in darkness. They are totally nocturnal. They've got, for the size of them, the same nocturnal traits. You'll see the big eyes, the big ears, absorbing lots of light. Those whiskers are really important. At the base of each whisker, pack rats have 100 to 200 nerve endings for each whisker that's helping them feel their way around in total darkness. And they live in cacti. I worked at Joshua Tree one time, and we had those cholla cactus everywhere, and they would just work their way through them and bring them back to their midden. So it was just a fortress that no one would mess with, but they could do all that maneuvering by being really careful with their whiskers. And I just had to take my car up to Brian's to get the fan fixed because they had done some chewing. This is just a common sight. A lot of us with our hoods up to try to prevent them from making their home, but it's because they want it dark. They want a safe, dark place. They don't want any light. So they're like, well, this looks like a nice rocky overhang, same kind of thing under the hood of your car. So kind of annoying. But then I have to mention another one of these nocturnal prey of the owls and other animals out looking for rodents. Rodents are the primary food of the world, I think. But the footprints here are the giveaway on this one. Big back feet and a tail that's so long it drags behind them when they jump. And they can jump up to 6 feet in one big bound. The kangaroo rat. Some of you have probably seen these tracks around. I'm always really excited when I see them. They're so distinctive. But they can use those big back legs and leap really, really far. They are also totally nocturnal. They do not want to be out during the daytime at all. And they are being, hunted by owls, by other critters. We'll show some thick photos in a moment. But they've got huge ear cavities, so their hearing is really great. They have, proportionately to the area of their skull, it's 90 times bigger than the space of our ears. So they're really focusing on the space in there to capture sounds. They're really maneuverable. They're kind of, just scurrying around at night all the time. But this is one of my favorite things I've come across recently. It's a series of videos by some graduate students that are studying kangaroo rats. You can look up the site Ninja Rat. You'll see some great videos. And I didn't want to embed the video because it would have been too big, but I'll give a quick little sequence of the photos. I just snipped some as we go. So they have amazing ability to evade rattlesnakes because of that long tail that helps them maneuver. So here's a sequence. Rats coming close, doesn't see the rattlesnake probably yet. This is a sidewinder, so it's not right here. But sidewinder's like, I'm ready to strike. I'm going to go at it. Uses their big legs to jump up real high, use that tail to whip around in the air and turn itself the other direction and run away. There's another one. You should be getting out of there. Oh, I think I went back by mistake. Sorry. Just to recap, the snake doesn't know what happened and the guy jumps away. So it's really fun. There's some really great videos. They've done some high-speed stuff and slowed it down. It would be too large to put in a PowerPoint. So keep your eyes open for those cool tracks. And of course, we just kind of gave away the next night animal that we will be talking about with that little prelude. The midget-faded rattlesnake is the only rattlesnake we find in Capitol Reef. I don't know if there's different types as we get up here. Higher elevations could have other sorts out here, but this is all we have documented in the park. The name might be inappropriate these days, but it is a smaller snake and it does blend in with the rocks. So these are, a lot of people don't like snakes, so we always try to, bring up they're a good part of the ecosystem. We're always having to, remind people that they're good to have around to keep the rodent population down. But the midget-faded does have one of the really, really toxic venoms. It's a combination of a neurotoxin and a myotoxin that can actually be lethal on small critters. So you don't want to get too close to them, of course, but they have some amazing night adaptations. They're not always night animals, but being ectothermic or cold-blooded, they will be active at night during the heat. So this time of year, they are totally nocturnal. So this is why you really want to use, I always tell people at the campground, use a flashlight when you walk around at night, because you don't know what you're going to come across. And they are great at finding their way around at night. They've got several special senses for night. That pit organ, pit viper, that term, is one clue to these things. One of their great senses. It's sort of like an enhanced type of vision where they can sense infrared through that pit organ. They can sense fine changes in temperature. So it gives them sort of a heat map of what they might be trying to hunt, even which part of the prey they want to aim for to have the best effect at getting it with one strike and taking care of it. So that's a pretty cool habit. They also have something that some other nocturnal animals have called a Jacobson organ. I think raccoons have it. I've heard of a few others. But it comes into play for them with that forked tongue that fits perfectly. Kind of, you see him out there shaking it a little bit. It's like tasting the air, really. And it takes that tongue and inserts it into a cavity in its mouth, kind of like up in the skull. And because it's forked, they can tell which side, which direction the smell or taste of the air was coming from that might be prey. So that gives them an extra clue that they can do even if it's totally dark. So kind of a neat thing. Oh, sorry, that might have been a video. I don't know. Oh, yeah, okay, not a problem. We will go on to another animal that does not have a warning rattle. I think that was a rattle in that last thing. So this doesn't give you a warning, but it also has quite a sting to it. I'm sure you might recognize what this little snippet of a photo might be from when we go larger. How does everybody feel about scorpions? I get a mixed reaction to this one. Like, they're super cool, but even I have a little bit of a heart attack when they surprise me. But they do glow under UV light, or a black light. They've got a thin layer on their exoskeleton called a hyaline layer, and it's all over their entire bodies, so they completely glow under UV light. Like rattlesnakes, they're sensing vibrations. They're getting vibrations in the little hairs on their pincers. They have an organ on their belly or abdomen against the ground that senses vibrations as well. So they're picking stuff up even if they can't see it. That exoskeleton, scientists have kind of wondered why it's there. I don't think they really have a solid answer, but some recent studies have shown that they can sense any UV light on any part of their body, and maybe that's a clue, like, oh, hey, is my arm getting sunburned, kind of thing? Like, is your arm sticking out the car window, and maybe I need to scurry away from the sun, or they scurry into a total dark place because they want to be in darkness. So maybe it's just like having another way of your body sensing that, like, hey, your leg's sticking out, pull it back in so it doesn't become a liability there. But it is kind of a neat thing, and it helps you find them. I just throw this in because I think it's the creepiest family photo in the entire world. I have not seen a grouping like that. That is not my photo, but I've heard they do this, and I would probably pass out. But and I know I'm supposed to love all critters, right? Like, that's my thing. But when this guy in my yard a couple months ago, I was moving a rock, and of course there he is right under it. It's that good reminder in these desert areas. Don't stick your hands where you can't see. Pay attention when you're moving things. The phrase I learned when I came out here a long time ago was, watch your hands, your feet, and your seat for all of these critters. Like, don't sit down. There could be a snake behind that log. Don't make sure to shake out your shoes in the morning if they've been outside or even inside. I've definitely had some scorpions in sleeping bags and things like that. So just a good reminder, like, we share the desert with some cool critters, but we just got to take a little bit of precaution here and there. And then we're going to jump to one that I saw the other day driving home after work, but cute little animal that will sting you in another way. It has a different kind of zap. Some of you may recognize those cute little feet, little five-toed footprint, they're real tiny. They are common, and some of us have had negative encounters. Anybody have a dog with a bad encounter with one of these lovely, adorable critters? They're so cute, and they're totally nocturnal. They're found all over the country. Our western skunk, striped skunk, more common out here, a little bit bigger than the other kinds. But they're black and white, which at night is a warning coloration. Daytime critters have like red or bright yellow when you can see color. But nobody's seeing color at night, so they might as well just be very distinctive with a black and white kind of pattern. They don't have much in the way to defend themselves other than that spray. So you probably encountered the upset skunk. Anybody have the hissing and stomping their feet a little bit? They'll try to warn people or dogs. Dogs don't get it. People usually do. And I'm actually going to put an outside tub at my house because I think we've dealt with this too many times. we have dogs that don't learn real well, but there have been enough incidents with skunks that we can't take it anymore. But the smaller ones, these little spotted skunks, has anybody ever seen one of these around here? I haven't either, but I've got one. Oh, I won't step over there, but it's on that counter. I have mine in a box. This is an old exhibit from the park that I was allowed to borrow. They're adorable. And they live here. They're all nocturnal. I don't think they're that common. But They definitely are throughout the Southwest. We do have them in the park, but I just haven't seen them yet. But they're so adorable, about half the size of the other one, and their warning display is even better. That's why I always like to include them, because they don't just like stomp their feet. They bust into a handstand, and they'll walk on their hands. They're shaking that tail around. I don't think it'll go to the video. But yeah, they get up there and that tail flashes around, and it's quite a display. There are some good videos online that you can see of these guys dancing around in their hands. And if that doesn't work, they're gonna drop their feet down, and they can spray up to 20 feet with that stream of methyl mercaptan, and they can do it like twice in a row, or a couple times at least. So it's not something they're good at it. Like they're like, I didn't want to do it, but you made me do it. So we can try to teach our dogs the warning signs, I think is all we can do. And that leads to another black and white night critter that has a mixed reputation. We've been having some issues with these guys down at the park recently. The best footprints, they just look like little tiny human hands. They don't have an opposable thumb, but it kind of looks like it. So we're seeing these tracks all over the place. I'm sure you do too. They're cute little guys, but they get into a lot of trouble, and they, because they're pretty dexterous and they're nimble and they have those agile hands. They have a great sense of smell. They're curious, they're social and gregarious, so they do things in groups sometimes. They get some, trash pandas, whatever. I did do some looking up on this, and there's actually a minor league baseball team called the Trash Pandas in Rocket City. It's down where they make missiles in Alabama, so it's kind of a neat little tie-in. I definitely want to go get a t-shirt from them someday, but they're having some issues this year. Their little hands can open coolers. They can open containers. Their hands are very nimble. They have lots of sensory tissue in their hands, lots of nerves. They're not good at long distance vision, but their up close vision is really good. So there's like little close things. They're looking at stuff, digging for insects and whatnot. Just tons of sensory nerves. They're usually going to be nocturnal. Like that's when they can be most active. You could see them during a day, but that's usually an accident. We all get up in the middle of the night sometimes and wander around. That's kind of how I think of it that way. But it looks like they're washing their hands, but they're, really just keeping them wet to increase the sensory touch. Sometimes they want to be able to, really feel things around when they're digging around for their food. And they're omnivores. They'll eat just about anything out there. This is a similar thing with some of these other nocturnal animals. We don't know exactly why some of these features exist. Like, why do they have that cute little bandit mask? But some say, just kind of maybe it's sort of like, a football player that wears eye black to prevent a little bit of glare. So if they're out when it's like the moon, maybe that doesn't bother them as much. It's a really hard thing to prove, but it seems like kind of a logical possibility. And I just had to throw this in because this was taken in the park housing area about 2 weeks ago. The raccoons have been getting into everything this year. We're wondering if it might be because there's no fruit in the orchards this year. Normally by now they'd be like sick on peaches, but there's nothing. So they're just wandering a little farther afield. They're getting into people's RVs and cars and digging around. So we are trying to get the word out, like lock everything up because they can get in to almost anything. But they are adorable. So it's good to keep them healthy by not getting them in trouble. And then one of the other, we only have a couple more animals we'll mention, but one is a cousin of the raccoon. So we're looking at a raccoon tail there. It's got those kind of bands on it. But the next one is also it's really only related to the raccoon. There's not many other animals it's close to. It also has adorable little five-toed footprints, like little tiny things. They're super cute. We've seen these in the buildings sometimes because they like to get in. Anybody recognize these cute little guys? Yeah. Anybody ever had one in your garage or crawl space or whatnot? They're adorable. They do like to get into buildings. It is definitely true. They've got those great nocturnal adaptations. You can see it again, those big eyes. So they can absorb any light possible. Big ears. They're absorbing sounds, long whiskers. So they're using all those senses that we see in the others. That tail comes into play in their agility. They're not ringtail. They're not the ringtail lemur. That gets confused sometimes. If you search on Google, it's always going to show you a ringtail lemur. And I know we've had companies that make stuffed animals send sample stuffed animals to see if we want to sell them, and they've sent us like lemur ones. We're like, no, we don't have lemurs. But ringtail are actually really common throughout the region, throughout the whole Southwest. They're native all the way down into Mexico. They're the state mammal of Arizona. So they're pretty common, but they are just nocturnal unless they've gotten like habituated to food at the base of a climbing route, which we see sometimes. So they're like digging in backpacks and things. So we don't want that. But they're also known as miners' cats because miners used to keep them in their cabins to keep mice down because they're great mousers. We had one in our garage for about 1 year when we lived in Zion National Park, and that was the only year we didn't have to worry about mice getting in our cars. I'd pull in late at night after work and there'd be a ringtail on the shelf. I was like, good job. But when he moved out, it was all downhill. So they're good little hunters. They are, up in trees, up in nooks and crannies and cracks in the rock, or working their way into buildings where they can make themselves a bit of a nuisance. They will, they got in the visitor center here. They used to be in the Zion Lodge all the time. So they're keeping the mice down, but they are getting in places where you might not want them. So you do have to keep on them, but they can get anywhere. That's part of the thing. They're so agile. They're basically acrobats. They can, run along these little skinny ledges using that big tail for balance if they have to jump or move around. They can, everybody here's probably, spent time like scrambling through cracks, like chimneying. They can do that with, feet on one wall and back against the other. They can like stem across a crack. They can even, people have seen them pull basically cartwheels where they're like, oh, my little ledge ran out. I need to go the other way. And they just kind of flip around and use their tail as balance, kind of like a little cartwheel. So they're really acrobatic and just, amazing little guys out here. So that leads to our last animal that we'll mention, the other acrobats, acrobats of the air. Obviously, I'm not going to talk much about bats. Everybody has heard plenty about bats. But I think the nice thing is that we're all starting to feel a little better about bats. They had a real bad reputation for a long time, and you hear all the bad things, and they all have rabies. They don't. Some do, but not all. They're hugely helpful, and we're all learning, all the great things they do for us. Is everybody on board with bats? Maybe, or at least if they're not in your space. It's okay if they're out there eating insects, right? Eating 10 to 20 insects per minute on average when they're out there, so that adds up to a lot overnight. We've got 17 documented species in the park, probably 19, but 17 that we have fully confirmed. And I'm always like, they're so cute, but then you're like, oh, you just ruined it. Nobody's gonna think you're cute when you do that, but they're kind of like little flying puppies, right? Adorable little furry faces. They are, doing a huge service on the insects, on pollinating, all that good stuff. Their superpower, everybody knows that, echolocation, kind of that sonar, they're throwing out those sounds, coming back off their prey. The amazing level of detail they can tell is pretty impressive. They can sense something as fine as a human hair at a good bit of distance. And that's why they all have such different ear shapes to perfectly catch the sounds that they're sending out back into their bizarrely different ear shapes, also based on the prey they're aiming for, so what they can hear. And we're lucky we can't hear them mostly. Sometimes we can hear the lowest of their frequencies, and you hear those little kind of clicks and chirps a little bit, but it's not real common. Most of their sounds we can't hear because they're in the ultrasonic frequency, and that's good because they're super loud. Like some of them have been measured at about 120 decibels, which would be like a smoke alarm right here going off full blast in your ear. So it would deafen us, and it would even damage their hearing. But many bats that have calls that loud have a special thing in their ear, and I don't think I have a photo of it anymore, but they have 3 little ear bones, like everybody has ear bones, little tiny, and when they do that loud pulsing, their ear bones separate hundreds and thousands of times in a minute to dampen the sound for them, so it's not like shaking their skulls so much. So they're even like, wow, this stuff is loud. I have to do something to prevent myself from being injured. But that's how they catch all the things they're catching. That's how they can tell so much detail in what they're going after. It's a pretty amazing superpower, letting them hunt for all sorts of things. And I always just like to include the pallid bat as a special mention because that's our biggest bat around here. Their wingspan can be up to 15 inches. And they're pretty amazing. You'll see them, you'll notice how big they are. They're light colored. They're out a little bit later after dark, not early like the canyon or pipistrelle bats. But when these come out, they often swoop low. So you might notice these kind of coming low because they're going after critters on the ground. They're going after a lot of those arachnids. They go after centipedes and scorpions and tarantulas. So some people like them because they take care of the scorpions. Once we had a tarantula that got in our house, and we're trying to escort it out. We got it out the front door, and we're like, "Go, little guy!" And immediately a pallid bat started diving at it. So we were like trying to escort a tarantula across the road. It was a funny scene, but we didn't want to just send him out to be food. It was a tough call. But this is again that niche differentiation, the day and night shift. The bats are out at night eating insects. Birds are out in the daytime eating a ton of insects. They don't have to overlap, so they're not competing. So they're getting to use that particular location like 24 hours a day, getting the full benefit for all of them out there. And that there's a lot more we could talk about, but that was plenty for the animals. But there's tons of animals out there on the night shift. A really amazing variety of what we have. And if I have a bunch of little kids in the group, I'll be like, let's take a vote on who do you think is the creepiest or the scariest. But yeah, I don't know. Just think about who you would least like to encounter when you step out your back door in the darkness. Do you have shoes on? Might be part of that question. So yeah, there's some things that still can give us the creeps, but they're pretty special and important in the environment. And some of these nighttime animals are just so cute. We just don't get to see them all that often because they're out at night. So it's a good reminder to drive slow if you're driving at night. Like you have these little guys run in front of you and you're like, oh, that's the only time I saw you. But nice to keep our eyes open and remember all of the amazing superpowers that all these animals have. And that's because oops, sorry, had a few that might not come up. They are nighttime animals, and they're adapted to that. They don't like lights, but some animals do. Some critters do. Insects are drawn to lights, so that's different. Some animals are thrown off course by lights and might distract their navigation, and lots of birds migrate at night. So all these animals evolved under natural cycles of light and dark. Millions of years of evolution to get used to their habitat, which is dark. And you can even watch radar weather maps to see flocks of birds migrating. It's just amazing to see how many take advantage of the night, enough that they look like clouds on a radar. There's just so many out there. And there's so many hazards for birds at night. We've got cities lit up really bright. They can get trapped in spotlights. They can hit the windows. It seems like there's the day once a year where we do, lights out in a city to try to let the birds migrate through, but they need more than one night. They have a rough gauntlet to get through to get to where they need to be. And for a long time, I think we've heard about like sea turtles having problems with light and going towards the hotels and streets instead of out towards the ocean and the moon. But now we're finding out it's lots of animals, even little things like a dung beetle that navigate using the stars. A lot of things depend on it. And this is just a chart showing how the percentage of different types of animals that are nocturnal. So yeah, of course all bats are nocturnal, almost all amphibians, 70% of mammals, 70% of invertebrates. So there's a ton of animals that this is their habitat. They need dark. And they need the cycles of light and dark as well. They evolved under it. Their senses are perfectly adapted for it. And strangely enough, even though we're diurnal, we need the cycles of light and dark as well. We evolved under that natural light, dark, need both, need good daylight, but we also need darkness. And in the past, for millions of years, the brightest it ever was at night was under a full moon. That would be a few days of real brightness. I mean, here, the moon is so bright on a full moon night, like, do you have to close your blinds, right? It's pretty bright. Like, there's something shining in my eye, which is amazing. But that was as bright as it ever got. And of course, that's not the case anymore. We light a lot of things up. Some cities can be fun. It's fun to go to Vegas maybe. But, does every gas station in the middle of the country need to be lit up, as bright as daytime? It's kind of unreal. And our bodies need those cycles to regulate our circadian rhythm. Our circadian rhythm needs bright light in the morning. There's a really good way to help your circadian rhythm is to get out for bright sunlight, sunglasses off, outside the car windows, good light. But then we need that full darkness for our rhythm to entrain properly. And this controls the production of like body chemicals, hormones like cortisol and melatonin. And it comes down to a part of our brain that's picking up and entraining. And what we find, and lots of studies are showing it now more and more. A long time ago, we didn't know this at all. 30 years ago, we didn't know that artificial light at night could have a negative effect on humans. But we're finding out that it's particularly those blue wavelengths. So it's not like blue light, but like white light that's bright enough that it has blue wavelengths can shut down that melatonin production. And that's what happens if it's light out. And so it's actually turning out, the World Health Organization has classified night work as a carcinogen for the cancer it can cause. Particularly, they were looking at night shift nurses and how much it affected them. And I used to live in a place that had no dark sky, and I thought maps like this were really pretty. Like it's beautiful, but it's not when you zoom in. And now that I live in a place that's dark, I appreciate it more than anything. I'm from the big white blob just outside of New York City. But you can see how nice it is out here. And this is actually a little bit of an older map, but the color intensity, you may have seen these, it goes black is dark, going up through the warm colors of the rainbow, bright cities to the white centers of cities, the absolute brightest. I mean, you can follow the interstates across the West on there pretty well. Just from city to city, you can see the lights. It's kind of a neat way to track geography, but it's also bad for us down here on the ground because it just keeps getting worse. It's interesting to talk to people that, 50 years ago, I didn't have, any of these lights out here, and I used to be able to see the stars, and it's getting worse everywhere. And it's been made accidentally worse recently with the switch to LED lights in a lot of places. And, the big switch, even the Park Service did this. We put in LEDs everywhere we had light fixtures because it was using less energy. So we could use a lot less energy, we could reduce the carbon footprint. But when they first came out, all the LED lights were in those high spectrum, the real bright white blue kind of lights. And that's what a lot of places went to really fast around the country and around the world. And it's only recently that we're starting to see even available to buy the lights in the warmer spectrum that don't cause as much light pollution and don't cause as much disruption to our system. So finally you can find them, but you have to work really hard to get the lights to make it a little less bright, cause less light pollution. But we're learning, and some of it's really simple. It can come down to something really small, like what kind of light fixture you put outside your house or at your business or in your town. Obviously, Torrey, first international dark sky town in Utah, that's pretty amazing. So it's a wonderful place to live, and Capitol Reef is an international dark sky park. And it just comes down to putting some thought into it. 30 years ago, before I was a park ranger, this was not a topic at all. But when I first started getting in, we were just starting to see an article in National Geographic, that kind of thing. It was just coming out that, light pollution is another type of pollution. But the cool thing is, it's probably the only environmental problem that we really know how to fix, and it makes economic sense to do so. So it's kind of hopeful in that way. We can fix our lighting, we can see more stars from anywhere we want to if we put the effort in. And if we spread the word to others that they can help at their home and in their community as well. And we've gotten better. We've made places better for wildlife. This is a place where I think Miami, where they have rules now for the wildlife, for the turtles. You have to have turtle-friendly lighting everywhere. So it's these amber colors. Amber is really great. Doesn't mess up wildlife, doesn't mess up our circadian rhythm. So if you have to get up in the middle of the night, I use a red headlamp to find my way out to the bathroom, because then it doesn't change your night vision. That's why astronomers use it. And kind of zooming into that map from earlier, the little red outlines are all the national parks out in the West. We've got still in the Colorado Plateau and the Basin and Range, some of the darkest skies in the country, for sure. It's a pretty special place to be able to live And that's why one reason a lot of people come here is to see the dark skies here. Everyone asks, do you have a night sky program tonight? And sometimes we're like, it's a full moon, no, or it's cloudy. But they're just so excited by the chance that they might be able to see stars. Like, that's not something they get. It's really nice to see that they're interested and that we can help them explain, like, why not tonight? But Capitol Reef has been a dark sky park for a long time now. And that means it's, I've worked at several other dark sky parks, helped some get their designation. And those are a promise to protect the sky in these places, to keep it as dark as possible, to make it darker where we can. It's a pledge to protect this habitat for future for all of those animals on the night shift. And it's a promise to future generations so they can get out and see the sky as well, and this wonderful thing we have overhead, and these critters that call it home. So I just want to thank you all for hanging out with me tonight a little bit, and I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite, very, very short poems by Wendell Berry. To go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go without sight. And find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. Thank you all so much. Thanks. It got dark outside, sorry.
Adrienne, I have a question.
Yeah.
You talked about the mischief makers, the raccoons,
Yeah.
ringtails, etc. Isn't that another way to say we're encroaching?
Absolutely.
And is that an issue in the park?
That's a really good question. I think we've been encroaching in their space since there's been a park and a campground and that kind of thing. So it's just at times we notice it more because they're normally able to take care of their needs when there's fruit or other things. So we really are trying to do education for the visitors spending the night in the campground. That's the big thing is, they have the right to go, wander wherever they want. This is their park, the raccoons, the ringtails and whatnot. But yeah, we need to do a better job of making sure everybody's putting their food away to not be an enticement and get them into trouble, I think. Yeah, that's a great question. We are in their space, for sure. But it's been a while. Any other questions, anybody? Happy to chat? Happy to talk about your sightings of mountain lions or spotted skunks. I would love to see one, but.
Hi there. You mentioned the ringtail, the minor ringtail.
Yeah.
That some miners would use it. Are many of these animals domesticatable?
Ooh, I know I've seen more, this is all like stuff we see on Facebook probably now, but I think raccoons a lot of people do have as pets. I know I've seen those or rehabilitated ones or something like that. So I'm not going to encourage that, but I think some of them probably, kind of hung out, kind of like a mouse or cat kind of thing. I don't know for sure if, how domesticatable they are, but they can carry some diseases, so that could be an issue. Some weird, I'm going to mispronounce them, but they can have some like bacterial things, so you don't want to really like play around with their feces and stuff like that. But, they might be better than the hantavirus that you might get from the mice, so it's kind of a trade-off. Thank you.
So at our house, we had a very busy week. We had both a rattlesnake and the 15-inch Pappardelle bat.
Oh yeah, the pallid bat.
Pallid
Yeah.
bat. We had a pallid bat in our living room
Oh my gosh.
and a faded midget rattlesnake in our bedroom.
Wow.
We escorted the faded rattlesnake outside, and it hung around for about 4 hours.
Oh my gosh.
We thought it was probably wanting to be a pet until
Oh no.
we convinced it to go inside of a box, and so we
will escort you farther.
We escorted it away.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
The bat we also got out of the house.
That's a lot to deal with. That's good. Yeah.
We just blocked its way with a broom until it got out.
They're hard to get out. Yeah, we haven't had a big one like that. We've had small ones, but it's always very creative while people are running around yelling, I think. Trying to think, yeah, so many interesting critter stories. We debate having it'd be nice to have a ringtail in our crawl space now because we definitely have mouse issues, but we've been live trapping pack rats and escorting them far, far away into areas and on the BLM and stuff. But I think they're adorable, but they're not helping our wiring and things like that. They chew on everything.
Anybody else?
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you. Come down and tell us your stories of animal sightings down at the park. Love to hear it. Thank you, guys.